The chandeliers trembled under the weight of whispers. Lucas Wright stood at the altar, his charcoal suit pressed sharp as a blade, his jaw tight enough to crack diamonds. Around him, Manhattan's elite leaned close, champagne glasses catching the light like weapons. She must have trapped him. It's borrowed. The string quartet tried to drown out the gossip, but nothing could silence the judgment bleeding through the grand ballroom. Ellie Hayes kept her eyes down. Each click of her heels on marble echoed like a verdict. The ivory gown hugged her frame, elegant but simple, with faint creases that betrayed its rental origin. Her hands trembled around a bouquet of white roses that smelled too sweet. Almost sickening. She had spent weeks convincing herself she could survive this, that she wouldn't break in front of cameras and strangers who looked at her like she was dirt on a crystal floor. Lucas watched the double doors as if escape might still be possible. His best man whispered close to his ear, "You don't have to do this." Lucas said nothing. He'd already made promises to his board, his lawyers, himself. This marriage was damage control, public spectacle to prove stability after the funding scandal that nearly destroyed his empire. 6 months. That's all it would take. Then she'd disappear and his reputation would be intact. When Ellie reached him, the music swelled. The officiant nodded. Lucas lifted the thin veil from her face. The room went silent. She wasn't what they expected. Soft features, gray eyes steady as storm clouds over the Hudson. Not nervous. Heartbreakingly calm, like someone who had endured too much to fear embarrassment anymore. Lucas's breath caught. Her face pulled something buried from deep inside him. A memory. A photograph on his father's desk. A girl who survived the bridge collapse that destroyed so many lives, including his family's name. His hand froze, still holding the edge of her veil. Why did he stop? Someone whispered. Cameras clicked like insects. Flashbulbs exploded. The silence stretched until the officiant cleared his throat. Lucas dropped the veil, reached for her hand. His voice came out low, steady, but wrong. "Shall we begin?" It sounded more like surrender than invitation. Ellie nodded. Her lips formed a faint smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Let's finish this," she whispered back. The vows were short, rehearsed, hollow. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Lucas leaned forward just enough for his lips to brush the air above her forehead. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed like lightning taut to them. It was proof this union was theater. To Ellie, it was mercy. She had prayed he wouldn't touch her. Not yet. Not like this. Applause broke out, forced and mechanical. Ellie's gaze drifted toward the back of the room. A man she didn't recognize slipped out quietly, his eyes on her the entire time. Something about the way he watched sent ice through her veins outside. January wind rattled the glass doors. Later the limo pulled away. City lights flickered through tinted glass. Lucas stared out the window, his reflection sharp against the night. Ellie clasped her hands in her lap, staring at the wedding band that felt foreign on her finger. Finally, he spoke. "You know why this happened?" She nodded. "I do." "Then don't expect anything else. This is business." She smiled faintly. "Of course, I've worked for businessmen before." He turned to face her, surprised by her calmness, but said nothing more. The limo crossed the bridge, dividing the city from Long Island. Neither noticed how both their gazes lingered on it. For Lucas, it was guilt. A reminder of the collapse years ago that stained his family's name. For Ellie, it was loss. The bridge where her father died. The night she stopped believing in miracles, fate, cruel and deliberate, had looped their lives into this one impossible evening. When the car arrived at the Wright estate, servants opened the door. The mansion loomed ahead, its windows dark except for one room lit upstairs. Lucas offered his hand to steady her. She hesitated, then took it. His touch was cold, but steady. For a brief second, she sensed the flicker of a heartbeat behind the armor. The butler's voice echoed down the marble corridor. "Mr. and Mrs. Wright." The words sounded hollow, grand, wrong. They walked past portraits of generations that had ruled the city skyline. None of those painted faces looked kind as the door closed behind them. The whispers from the ballroom seemed to follow. Somewhere in that silence, something fragile began to breathe. Not love, not yet, but the ache of two lonely souls standing at the edge of a story neither wanted to tell. And in the shadows of the mansion, watching from the upstairs window, someone else stood waiting. Morning sunlight spilled through tall windows, touching everything except the two people sitting at opposite ends of a long oak table. Breakfast sat untouched. Silverware gleamed. Coffee cooled. Silence stretched between them like a polished blade. Lucas was already dressed for work, crisp and composed, his watch glinting under the light. Ellie wore a cream blouse, her hair tied back neatly, her expression unreadable. He folded his newspaper. "The board expects us at the charity gala next week." His tone was formal, professional, as if she were an employee, not his wife. "Understood," Ellie said calmly. She continued sipping her coffee. He studied her, perhaps expecting hesitation. But she gave him nothing. Outside, headlines screamed. Wright weds former employee, charity bride or scandal shield. Lucas had seen them all before breakfast. His legal team predicted this storm. He'd agreed to weather it for 6 months. No more that afternoon, his attorney arrived with documents, thick pages filled with clauses about confidentiality, image rights, separation terms. Lucas skimmed through them. Tapping his pen impatiently, the lawyer turned to Ellie. "You'll receive monthly compensation and an additional settlement at the end of 6 months." Ellie looked at the numbers, then pushed the papers back. "I don't want the money." The lawyer blinked. Lucas's gaze snapped toward her. "Excuse me?" "I'm not here for your money," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I agreed to this because I need time. Time to clear the debts from my mother's medical bills before the bank takes her house. That's all." Lucas stared at her for several seconds, unable to read her. "You're telling me you'd go through this circus for free?" "I'm saying I'll sign the papers but remove the payment clause. I'm not for sale." Her words hit harder than she intended. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Lucas. "Fine," Lucas said finally. "If that's how you want it." His tone was cool, but something inside him twisted. He wasn't used to defiance that came without agenda. After the lawyer left, Ellie remained seated, looking out at the frozen garden. She could feel Lucas's gaze on her, weighing, calculating. "You think this makes you noble?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, it makes me free." He didn't respond, only turned and left the room. In his study, Lucas sank into the leather chair behind his desk. The city skyline framed behind him. He had built towers that touched the clouds. Yet somehow, this quiet woman unsettled him more than any lawsuit ever had. He thought of her file. Employment record clean and ordinary. No scandal, no ambition. Just years of quiet diligence in the finance department. Before she resigned to care for her dying mother, nothing about her explained the calm defiance in her eyes. Nothing explained why, when she spoke, he heard the faint echo of someone who had once mattered to him. Lucas opened his desk drawer. Inside lay a faded photograph, edges worn from years of handling. 2 children standing by a riverbank. A boy with messy dark hair, a girl with gray eyes and a gap-toothed smile. His hand trembled as he picked it up. Ellie Brooks, he whispered to himself. The name she'd used before her mother remarried. Before the bridge collapse, before everything fell apart, he'd known the moment he lifted her veil. But he hadn't been certain. Not until she refused his money. Not until she looked at him with the same stubborn pride she'd had as a child. When she'd shared her lunch with him every day because his father forgot to pack one, she didn't recognize him. 15 years and a different last name had erased him from her memory, but he remembered everything. Upstairs, Ellie unpacked what little she owned. A few books. Her mother's old scarf, a faded photograph of the two of them smiling outside their small townhouse. Everything else she'd sold to pay the hospital. She placed the picture on the nightstand, beside her new life's unfamiliar luxury. She didn't belong here, but she would endure it for 6 months. Then she'd walk away, debt-free. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text was simple. You shouldn't have married him. You don't know what he's done. Her blood turned cold. She deleted the message, hand shaking. A knock on the door made her jump. "Dinner is served, Mrs. Wright," the housekeeper said gently through the wood. Ellie steadied her breath. "I'll be right down." But when she opened the door, no one was there. Only a white rose on the floor, identical to the ones from her wedding bouquet. And beneath it, a single word written on a card in familiar handwriting she hadn't seen in 15 years. "Run." Ellie's fingers trembled as she held the card. The handwriting was achingly familiar, like a voice from a dream she'd tried to forget. She rushed downstairs, the white rose clutched in her hand. Lucas sat alone in the dining room, a glass of whiskey untouched beside his plate. He looked up as she entered, his expression unreadable. "Who left this?" She threw the card onto the table. He glanced at it, then at her. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Someone was upstairs. Someone left me this." Her voice cracked. "That handwriting? I've seen it before." Lucas stood slowly, his jaw tightening. "This house has security cameras everywhere. No one came upstairs. Then how do you explain this?" She held up the rose. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, fear, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "Staff probably left it," he said coldly. "You're being paranoid, don't." Her voice sharpened. "Don't treat me like I'm crazy." He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "Then don't act like it. You agreed to this arrangement. 6 months of playing the perfect wife, not 6 months of conspiracy theories. Why did you really marry me?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "You could have chosen anyone. Why me?" His face went blank. "You were convenient, liar." The word hung between them like a blade. Lucas's composure cracked. "Be careful, Ellie." "Or what? You'll end this charade?" "Maybe I should." She turned to leave. His hand caught her wrist. "Wait." She froze. His touch burned, different from the cold formality he'd shown before. When she looked back, his eyes held something raw and wounded. "I knew your father," he said quietly. The room tilted. "What?" "The bridge collapse. 15 years ago." His voice was barely above a whisper. "My father's company built that bridge. Your father died when it fell." Ellie's breath stopped. "You're lying." "I wish I was." He released her wrist, stepped back. "My father cut corners on the construction. Steel that wasn't reinforced properly. Inspections that were falsified. When it collapsed, 17 people died. Your father was one of them." Tears burned her eyes. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because someone else is going to tell you eventually. And I'd rather you hear it from me, you knew." Her voice broke. "You knew who I was when you married me. You knew what your family did to mine?" "Yes." "Then why?" She was shaking now, rage and grief twisting inside her. "Why would you bind yourself to me? Guilt? Some twisted form of repentance?" He looked away, the muscle in his jaw working. "It's more complicated than that. Try me." His eyes met hers again, and for the first time, she saw past the armor. Past the cold businessman, past the lies. "Because I owed him," Lucas said. "Your father saved my life that day." The words hit like a physical blow. "What?" "I was 10 years old. On that bridge with my mother. When it started to collapse, your father pulled me from the car. Got me to safety. Then he went back for my mother." Lucas's voice cracked. He didn't make it out. Ellie's legs gave way. She sank into a chair, her entire world rewriting itself. "He saved you," she whispered. "And I've lived with that every day since." Lucas turned away, his shoulders rigid. "So when I saw your name in the employee files, when I learned you were drowning in medical debt, I thought I could finally do something. I could give you 6 months of stability. Clear your mother's bills. Let you start over. That's not redemption." Her voice was hollow. "That's you buying your way out of guilt. Maybe." Faced her again, his expression shattered. "But it's all I have." Silence filled the space between them, heavy with 15 years of loss and lies. Ellie stood slowly. "I need air." She walked toward the terrace doors, but Lucas caught her arm again. "There's something else you should know." She waited, her heart hammering. "The one watching you." His grip tightened. "That was my half-brother, Daniel. What does he want?" Lucas's eyes darkened. "Everything I have, including you." Before she could respond, the terrace doors exploded inward. Glass shattered. Wind howled. And through the broken frame stepped a man with Lucas's eyes and a smile like poison. "Hello, brother," Daniel said, pulling a gun from his coat. "We need to talk about our father's will." Glass crunched under Daniel's boots as he stepped into the dining room. The gun in his hand was steady, almost casual, like he'd done this before. Lucas moved in front of Ellie. "Put it down, Daniel. It's not until we settle this." Daniel's smile widened. "You really thought marrying her would protect the company?" "The empire father built on blood and lies. This has nothing to do with her," Lucas said, his voice deadly calm. "Oh, but it does." Daniel's gaze slid to Ellie. "Tell him, sweetheart. Tell him about our little conversation 3 weeks ago." "I don't know what you're talking about." "The coffee shop on Fifth Avenue. You were so desperate to save your mother's house?" Daniel tilted his head. "I offered you twice what Lucas was paying. All you had to do was get close to him, earn his trust, and when the time came, help me destroy everything he built." "That's a lie," Ellie whispered. But Lucas turned to face her, and the look in his eyes gutted her. "Is it?" His voice was barely audible. "Lucas, I never—" "She took the money," Daniel interrupted, pulling out his phone. He tapped the screen, then turned it toward them. A bank statement. Ellie's name. A deposit dated 3 weeks before the wedding. $50,000. "No," Ellie's voice cracked. "That's not real. I never took anything from him." "Then explain the deposit," Lucas said coldly. "I can't." Watch tears blurred her vision. "I don't know where that came from." "Lucas, you have to believe me." But his face had gone blank again, the walls slamming back into place. "You played me perfectly," Lucas said. "The refusing money, the noble act." I actually thought he stopped himself, jaw clenching. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." Ellie stepped toward him, desperate. "Whatever he's showing you, it's fake. I would never enough." Lucas's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Daniel, what do you want? Simple. Sign over your shares of the company. Or I go to the press with evidence that you knowingly married the daughter of the man your father killed. That you've been paying her off to keep quiet about the bridge collapse." "That's insane," Ellie said. "None of that is true. Truth doesn't matter." Daniel shrugged. "Perception does. By tomorrow morning, every news outlet will paint Lucas as a monster, trying to silence his family's victims. The board will have no choice but to remove him." Lucas's hands curled into fists. "You destroy everything Father built. Father built nothing but corpses and cover-ups. I'm just finishing what he started." Daniel's finger moved to the trigger. "Sign the papers, Lucas, or she dies first." The gun shifted toward Ellie. Lucas moved without thinking. He lunged at Daniel, slamming into him. The gun went off, deafening in the enclosed space. Plaster exploded from the ceiling. They crashed into the table, wood splintering. Ellie screamed, scrambling backward as the two men fought. Daniel was faster, meaner. He drove his elbow into Lucas's ribs, then brought the gun down toward his head. "Stop." Ellie grabbed a silver candlestick from the mantel and swung. It connected with Daniel's skull. He crumpled, the gun skittering across the floor. Lucas kicked it away, then pulled himself up, breathing hard. Blood dripped from his split lip. "You okay?" he asked Ellie. She nodded, shaking. Daniel groaned on the floor, clutching his head. Lucas grabbed his phone, dialing security, but before he could speak, Daniel laughed. A wet, ugly sound. "You're so predictable, brother. Always the hero." He looked at Ellie. "Did he tell you the rest? About why your father really went back to that bridge?" "Shut up," Lucas growled. "Went back because Lucas's father called him. Told him there was a child trapped in the wreckage." Daniel's smile was cruel, but there wasn't. It was a lie to get him back onto the bridge before the final collapse. Because your father had discovered the truth about the faulty construction. And dead men don't testify. Ellie's world shattered. No, she whispered. Lucas closed his eyes. Ellie, you knew? Her voice was hollow. You knew your father murdered mine. I found out 2 years ago. When I took over the company, the files were hidden in his private office. Lucas's words came out broken. I've been trying to make it right. The charity work. The foundations. Everything I've built was on my father's grave. Ellie backed away from him, her heart splintering into pieces. You let me believe it was an accident? You let me marry you knowing the truth? I was going to tell you. After the 6 months when you were safe. Safe. Her laugh was bitter. I've never been safe. Not from your family. Not from you. Security flooded into the room. They hauled Daniel to his feet, but his eyes stayed locked on Ellie. The deposit was real, he called as they dragged him away. But it wasn't from me. Ask Lucas where it really came from.
Ask him what he did to ensure you'd have no choice but to marry him.
The door slammed shut. Ellie turned to Lucas, and the look on his face told her everything. You paid off my debts, she said softly. Before the wedding. You made sure I was desperate enough to agree. I didn't deny it. I needed you to say yes, Lucas whispered. I needed to protect you from Daniel, from the lawsuits, from everything. I thought if I could just keep you close for 6 months, you manipulated me. Tears streamed down her face. Just like your father manipulated mine. Ellie, please don't. She held up her hand. Don't say my name like that. Like you care. I do care. His voice broke. God help me, I care more than I should. Then let me go. The silence that followed was deafening. Lucas stepped back, his face carved from stone. The car will take you wherever you want to go. The house is yours, debt-free. I'll sign whatever you need. I don't want your guilt money. Ellie pulled off her wedding ring and placed it on the broken table. I want the truth about what happened to my father. Every document, every lie, everything. Lucas nodded slowly. You'll have it. All of it. She walked toward the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, the boy I knew 15 years ago, one who shared his lunch with me by the river, would have married him for free. Lucas's composure finally shattered. Ellie, but she was already gone, and in the empty room, surrounded by shattered glass and broken promises. Lucas Wright realized he'd just lost the only person who'd ever seen him as more than his father's son. 3 months passed, like winter rain. Cold, relentless, numbing. Ellie moved into a small apartment downtown, the kind with thin walls and a view of the fire escape. She'd refused Lucas's offers, his lawyers, his endless attempts to make amends. Every document about her father's death arrived by courier. Every piece of evidence about the corruption, the cover-up, the murder disguised as negligence. She read them all, cried over them, and slowly, painfully began to understand. Lucas's father hadn't just built an empire. He'd built it on graves. And Lucas had spent years trying to dismantle it from the inside. Piece by piece, donation by foundation, trying to buy back souls with money that would never be enough. It didn't excuse the manipulation, but it explained the haunted look in his eyes. On a gray April morning, Ellie stood in front of the bridge. The one they'd rebuilt after the collapse. Steel and concrete, reinforced properly this time. Memorial plaque listed. 17 names. Her father's was third from the top. She heard footsteps behind her but didn't turn. I didn't think you'd come, Lucas said quietly. I didn't think you'd keep showing up. This was the 7th time she'd found him here. He never approached, stood at a distance, a silent ghost keeping vigil. I owe him more than flowers, Lucas said. I owe him a lifetime I can't give back. Ellie finally looked at him. He'd lost weight. The sharp edges of his face were sharper still, carved by something deeper than grief. His eyes held the kind of exhaustion that came from not sleeping, not eating, not forgiving yourself. Daniel's in custody, he said. Federal charges. Wire fraud, extortion, attempted murder. He'll be locked up for years. I know, I testified. Thank you. Silence stretched between them, less hostile now, just sad. I'm selling the company, Lucas said. All of it. The board accepted my resignation last week. Proceeds are going into a fund for the families affected by the bridge collapse. Your mother's medical debts, everything, it's covered. Not from me, from the fund. Ellie's breath caught. Lucas, I'm leaving New York, he continued, his voice steady but hollow. There's a teaching position in Seattle. It's architecture students who want to build things that don't kill people. Seems fitting. You're running away. No, he met her eyes. I'm letting go of the company, of the guilt, of you. The last word hit harder than she expected. I found something, Ellie said softly. She pulled out an old photograph from her pocket. 2 children by a river, a boy with dark hair, a girl with a gap-toothed smile. My mother kept all my childhood photos. I was looking through them last week, and I found this. Lucas stared at the image, his composure cracking. I remembered you, Ellie whispered. Not your last name, not your father, just you. The boy who was kind when no one else was. The boy who made me laugh when my dad worked double shifts. It's the boy I thought I'd never see again. Ellie, I know why you married me now. Not just guilt. Not just duty. Her voice broke. You were trying to save the girl you couldn't save 15 years ago. The girl who lost everything because of your family. Lucas's hands trembled. I'm sorry for all of it. For the lies, the manipulation, for not being brave enough to just tell you the truth from the beginning. I forgive you. The words hung in the air like grace. Lucas looked at her, stunned. How can you? Because I understand what carrying that kind of weight does to a person. Because I've spent 3 months reading about a boy who tried to fix his father's sins and nearly destroyed himself in the process. Because forgiveness isn't about what you deserve. It's about what I need to let go of. Tears streamed down his face. Didn't bother wiping them away. I loved you, he said. Not the arrangement, not the redemption. You and I destroyed any chance of that being real. Ellie stepped closer. Close enough to see the fractures in his armor. Close enough to feel the raw honesty bleeding from him. Love isn't a contract, Lucas. It's not 6 months of pretending. It's choosing someone even when they're broken, even when they've hurt you, even when walking away would be easier. You're walking away, boy. His voice was barely audible. No, she took his hand, the one that had offered her steadiness on their wedding night. I'm choosing you, the real you, not the billionaire, not the guilty son. Just the boy who shared his lunch. The man who tried to make things right, even when he didn't know how. Lucas pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a world that had crumbled around him. She held him back, feeling his heart beat against hers, steady and real and terrifyingly human. I don't deserve this, he whispered into her hair. None of us deserve grace, but we get it anyway. They stood there on the bridge, 2 survivors of a tragedy that had tried to bury them both. The river flowed beneath, indifferent to the weight of the past. The morning sun broke through the clouds, casting light on the memorial plaque, on her father's name. He'd want me to be happy, Ellie said softly. Would he want you to be happy with me? I think he'd want me to be happy with someone who fights for what's right, even when it costs everything. Lucas pulled back, cupped her face in his hands. I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth this. Worth you. Good, she smiled. The first real smile in months, because this time we're doing it right. No contracts, no lies, no 6-month expiration date. Just us, just us. He kissed her then, soft and desperate and healing. A promise that tasted like second chances and redemption, earned through shattered pride and brutal honesty. When they finally pulled apart, Ellie took his hand. Come on, I'll buy you lunch. Lucas laughed, the sound rusty but real. You don't have to, I know, but I want to, when I want to. And this time, you're going to let me. They walked away from the bridge together, leaving flowers at the memorial. Leaving the ghosts. Leaving the weight of their father's mistakes behind. Seattle could wait. Teaching could wait. Everything could wait for this fragile, imperfect, beautiful thing they were building from ruins. Because some stories don't end with a kiss. They end with 2 broken people choosing to heal together. Choosing to fight for a love that was never supposed to survive but did anyway. And sometimes, that's the only happy ending that matters. The end.